It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by AgileDad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. We had a recent note from a subscriber where they asked us to do a podcast episode on something referred to as objective story points, and I believe I know what they're trying to say. One of the complications with story points is that oftentimes we try to tie story points back to time. And when we do so, it's a different level of effort from each person to complete something, which means that any given item could have any number of story points. So, for example, if I were a professional painter, painting a wall would be a very small task for me and not a big deal. But if I had never painted a wall before and I was asked to paint a wall, it would be a huge undertaking to make sure it looks right. And it would take me a lot more time than it took the professional painter. Whereas if my skill was, I don't know, landscaping, and I was doing a landscaping patio where I was putting down the pavers, it would take me a very small amount of time to lay down those pavers than it would the artist who may be trying to be a perfectionist, get them perfect and perfectly spaced and whatnot. While both jobs would probably look satisfactorily, one would take way longer than the other. So trying to use time as a metric to size things is really poor form. It would be the same as asking someone how many gallons their baby weighed, not in water but in mercury. It's the wrong question, a wrong unit of measure, because the truth is each different person who works on a product, project, or service is going to take a different amount of time to complete it. So if that's not the right question, what is the right question? What question should we be asking? And the question is, compared to all other things we're working for, and with this as a benchmark, how big or small is the other item? Now, I've seen teams use t-shirt sizes, dog sizes, dinosaur sizes. I was in Colorado and Boulder or Denver, and they used the 7 peak sizes for the mountains. I've seen all different types of sizing used. What I'm trying to say is, as long as the team and the people who are in the organization are familiar with what terminology or what metrics you're using for sizing, it's fine, as long as it's not numeric and as long as it's not time related. If you can get past that, it's fine. Now, I had someone challenge me. They called me out. They said, "But Lee, you're saying how many points can fit in a 2-week sprint. Isn't that a time boundary?" And the answer is, when I say sprint, I want you to think of sprint as a container. Is the container 32 ounces or 16 ounces or 12 ounces? I want you to think of the sprint as a container. In this case, I call it a 2-week container. If I took the word week out and called it a 2-ounce or a 2-pint or a 2-gallon container, it might make more sense. The descriptor is based on the size of the container more so than the time that it takes. Therefore, when I'm filling a container with volume of content, not with time bound size. And I think that if you look at it this way, in a very objective way, it makes a lot more sense. Because then, if I have a group of painters painting walls, I might say that that group of painters could paint 20 extra small walls, 10 small walls, roughly 7 medium walls, 4 large walls, or 1 narwhal. You get the point. I'm talking about points here. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that if you map it back to this is a small and where are we going, and as long as that collective group of painters stay together and we're not constantly swapping people in and out, swapping painters in and out of the mix, what you're going to quickly discover is that that team of painters can paint a certain number of units every single time, 20 units. And you can break those 20 units down however you'd like. And you can start the least experienced painter on a most difficult wall or the most experienced painter on an easy wall. And if you do that, the most experienced painter will finish all the easy walls and meet the least experienced painter on a hard wall. If you divided it up and said, okay, we're going to put the least experienced painter on the easy stuff and the most experienced painter on the hard stuff, they'll meet somewhere in the middle. The point I'm trying to make is no matter how you spread out the team, if they just paint as efficiently as they can, you're going to get the same number of walls painted within that bucket, within that measurement. So if you approach stories and story points, if you approach velocity and points in general as a measurement of volume, how many units can we fit inside? And you can map it back together behind the scenes to where an extra small equals 1, a small equals 2, medium is 3, large is 5, and extra large is 8. And that's going to give you the tools necessary in order for you to be successful with objectively trying to sequence story points. Now, we can thank our mathematician Fibonacci for this. Fibonacci was an Italian mathematician, and what was so interesting about Fibonacci is that even today, his scale is used for predictability because it is the most accurate way to forecast or be predictive. And many legal firms use it, accounting firms use it. The Fibonacci sequencing is incredibly important, and it works quite well. If you wanted to learn more about Fibonacci, you could find his tomb as well as a statue dedicated to him just a few short paces away from the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Many of you may be wondering why, and it's because, according to his math, I'm guessing that the tower would lean, and this was his way of saying, I told you so. Uh, it's kind of funny when the irony is just dripping there when you find out where he is. But I think the bigger picture that I'm trying to expose you to is that there are three things you need to do, just three fundamental things that you need to do in order to make sure that story points make sense and that everyone understands. Number one, now you rarely hear me use this word, never, ever, ever, under any circumstance ever, no matter what, ever, never, ever, are we getting back together. Oh, wait, no, that's a Taylor Swift song. Hold on. We are never, ever, ever getting back together. Oh, sorry. Now I got that song stuck in my head. Never, ever, ever, in any circumstance should you use time to be associated with size. You don't want to do that. Okay? Because when you're using time and associating with size, then if it takes two different people, two different amounts of time because they have two different skill sets or different tools, it doesn't accommodate for that. Take time out of the equation and just focus on size only. So that's number one. That's the number one most important thing you can do. Number two, if you're talking about stories and you're talking about getting it right, break them down into small, consumable pieces. The smaller the stories are, the easier they're going to be to consume. The easier they are to consume, the easier they are to forecast a size. And it's just going to make it a lot easier. And three, make sure you have the right people in the room. I think that too many times we have too many people in the room or not enough people, or we let the senior architect estimate everything and it's not the pace at which the rest of the team moves. I think you see where I'm going here. We need to have balance when we do this. And I just think that a lot of times we miss the mark because we either A, don't have the right people in the room, B, we haven't broken down the work so it's easily consumable, or C, we're trying to use time to estimate. If you can get those three things right, that's going to help tremendously change your ability to forecast and help you to really be able to get your head around story points and objective sizing. That's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want us to discover, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.